Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 618, recorded the week of November 6th. I'm your host, Patrick. This week's screenshot, Night Realm celebrates the Night Revels and finds some seasons conterminous in this week's screenshot of the week. Nice screenshot. Love the Night Revels sky. It's really pretty. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can catch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next weekend, and you can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOCast.com, with our calendar. On the podcast this week, we've got some game news to get through. I'm going to do it myself. Partly because I want to get through it somewhat fast so we can get you to the main thing. We sat down with the devs this week for Ask the Devs, Fables of the Feywild edition. So after the news portion, you'll get to hear from several of the devs about Fables of the Feywild and a few other topics as well. We'll start with the game news, though. Fables of the Feywild did release this week. That's update 48, so we did get release notes, of course. There are the Fables of the Feywild is out, so there's 13 quests, a wilderness area, and a new public zone. The raid, which we did talk about in the Ask the Devs, will be coming later. In heroics, these are levels 5 to 6, and legendary, they're 32. So you can access the new Fables of the Feywild expansion by visiting the Hut from Beyond in the Stormreach Harbor. Early returns for me, I like it. The quests are not very linear, which I think fits really well for the Feywild just as a concept. So if you think about the last couple expansions that we had with Sharn and Ravenloft, this is much more towards Ravenloft in terms of what the content, how the content progresses. By which I mean the quests are not very linear. There's not Sharn. It tends to be pretty linear. Go here, do this. Go here, do this. Ravenloft has a much more, Argynvost, Holt, Amber Temple, Castle Ravenloft. These places that you kind of explore and go to different areas, and what you're looking for may be in a slightly different place from each time you run the quest. That's kind of more the feel of Feywild. The aesthetic is pretty different and pretty as well. So I think people enjoy it. Notes, otherwise, male shifters now properly use fiddle animations for bard songs. Bard Swashbuckler's different tact no longer has its erroneous single weapon fighting prerequisite, so that's nice. Favorite enemy Fey is now working correctly and can be selected by rangers as well. Sense weakness has been fixed, so it provides its correct helpless damage, which is great because that's one of the best reasons to take that enhancement, that Epic Destiny. Let's see. A couple of the legendary alchemical things are now working correctly and are the correct item again. The augment system has been revamped. So any augment that's not slotted into an item when you log in after the update will be updated to both work with the new augment system and get the updated effects if it has them. If an item has an empty augment slot when you log in, it will be updated to work as well. A distinction here, they have to be in your inventory. My understanding is them being in your bank doesn't work, or your reincarnation cache doesn't work. You'll need to log out and log in with them in your actual inventory. Over time, that should be a lot easier to do and stuff. If you have an item that has an augment slotted into it, they won't update. You'll need to get a legacy augment on Slaughter, unslot them, and then log out and log back in. The script runs when you log in, so it has to be in the empty, not slotted state to have that script run on it when you log in. If you're wondering how to use the augments, there's a button on your inventory page. It used to say legendary, or I believe it said like augment for a long time, and then they changed it to legendary greensteel, and then it changed back. But that's where it is, and we'll actually cover some of that in the Ask the Devs portion as well. And of course, there's new augments that you can find in the Feywild and empty soul vessels, which can do some fun things with raid items, which we've talked about before. Monsters' twig blights are now vulnerable to fire. Yay! They're made of plant material. Them being vulnerable to fire and wood burns makes sense. Some fire and cold resistance on plant monsters that was not supposed to be there has been removed. And several shambling mounds have now corrected vulnerabilities. If you're reading that and thinking to yourself, I bet there's some of these monsters in Fables of the Feywild, you would be correct. Let's see. Fables of the Feywild. Players who own the Fables of the Feywild Collector's Edition will find their level 5 Feywild Muse Satyr Bard Hireling in their inventory when they log in. If you are an Ultimate purchaser, you will also get the level 30 Hireling and the Feywild Tuning Fork. The Feywild Tuning Fork will take you to the Hut from Beyond until you reach the public area for Fables of the Feywild. That is through the Explorer area. It's really easy to find. Just follow the road when you get in. And then you need to talk to the first quest chain giver. The Tuning Fork will actually tell you the specific person, but they're just in to the left if you're looking for them. Several DAS creatures in the Masterminds of Sharn will no longer drop empty treasure bags. Races, Razorclaw Shifter, claw attacks now have a larger hitbox, matching Monk hand wrap hitbox sizes. Razorclaw Shifter males now animate properly when using Supreme Cleave or Stunning Blow with hand wraps. Those are also timed properly for Razorclaw Shifter males. The first and second past life for Shifter feats now properly grant their bonuses. The iconic past life for Razorclaw Shifter is now properly named. Razorclaw Shift ability now grants dexterity as intended instead of constitution. Arcot and I actually talked about this last time. We kind of looking at the difference between the Razorclaw Shift and the Barbarian Rage. It's like, oh yeah, the Barbarian Rage gets Constitution, not Dexterity, and we like that better. And then we found out afterwards that it was actually giving Constitution and not Dexterity. So that's been fixed now. Let's see, Beast, Hide, Wild Hunt, and Razorclaw Shift now grant their passive ability score bonus as listed. And the core ability score bonuses for Shifter and Razorclaw also now grant their listed bonuses. Spells, Panacea, Close Wounds, and Heal, and Unyielding Sovereignty now clear bleed effects. That's pretty cool. Dot effects that keep doing damage, and it's nice to be able to get rid of those. And I really like that selection of spells. Really makes sense. And hey, if you don't know, Close Wounds, underrated spell. That one's great, especially if your favorite soul and have the SLA for that. Fantastic. See, Guild and Guild Officer chat is now being handled differently on the back end, which should greatly improve how quickly Guild chat is available after a world restart and how fast it recovers after a reconnection between game servers and chat servers. Text messages sent to General, Advice, Trade, Party, Guild Officer, or player-created chat rooms will now be displayed to you after they go to the chat server and back. This means that if you are not connected to the chat server, it won't look like you're chatting with your guild, for example. That's really nice. I will say it's going to take a little bit of getting used to, though, because your name actually shows up. It used to just say, like, to party. Now it says your character name and then what you said. So it's going to be it's a little weird just because I'm so used to, if I see the link type name, it's someone else, not me. So it's going to take a little getting used to. Also, I'll have to remember what character I'm on because it's that character's name, so might get a little confusing there. The launcher now has a Remember Me for 8 hours checkbox. We're gonna put a pin in that, or we're gonna come back to it. Known issues: augments are not currently recognizing their binding status when slotted into an item. Players should not expect to be able to trade items with augments in them that have a bound to account binding state, and this will be fixed in the next patch. I think it's actually been true for a while. That's not a new thing. But basically, if you put a bound to account augment into an item that's not bound, it should become bound to account while that augment is in there. That's not happening. And it will, so don't plan on it being a thing. There is currently not a saga for Fables of the Feywild, but they intend to debut a saga in the near future. So that'll be kind of nice. The shifter Wish of Memories. Some people have been asking, hey, there's no shifter Wish of Memories. I'd like to use that to get my racial past lives instead. They did write that they expect in the same follow-up patch that will contain the Feywild saga. No strict timeline ready to announce, but it should be in the next couple of weeks for both of those. And bugs. So remember when I said that we're going to put a pin in the Remember Me for 8 hours checkbox? They're looking... So checking that box for a number of people meant that it causes your settings to reset. And this actually happened to me as well. What that means is it's really just the audio settings and kind of pseudily the video settings. Although I think my video settings are kind of controlled much more than I would like by my video card. But it'll change some of your settings. It also clears your connection history. So when you look at the login screen, it says, hey, you logged into Kyber today and these other servers yesterday. It clears all of that. It clears your username out of there. It does everything opposite of what you would expect Remember Me to do. It forgets you. Everyone is not having that experience. And they did turn that off for the time being while they look into that. Which is interesting because it means that they can do that without bringing it without an update or anything. So that's kind of interesting. But that's what happened with the 8 hours box. They got to look into it and got to try and fix it. So it's not working. Bonus days. The bonus days of the week are double mysterious remnants through November 8th. So you get twice the chance of remnants to appear when defeating champions. One of my favorite bonus days these days, besides XP boosts. Store news. So there was an update to the DDO market this week, which includes a page for customers to remove payment methods and a page for customers to see their transaction history. Both really good things, and I have to ask why they weren't included in the first place. Additionally, they have been working to address remaining payment questions and issues. Currently, most forms of currency can be accepted, and most prominent payment methods, except for PaySafe, can be used. We expect to allow for PaySafe in the future. In the meantime, any players who experience purchasing issues can try one of several things on their own prior to contacting account support. The suggestions they have are to delete all cookies from your browser and try again. Try using a different web browser. Disable any browser add-ons. Make sure pop-up blockers have been disabled. If you're using a VPN, try it without. And make sure your PayPal account is verified if you're using PayPal. The sales for the week, improve your character. So it's 20% off of select stat and skill tomes. There's also off of the Harper Agent enhancement tree. Still the only universal enhancer tree they put on sale. That's through November 12th. You can also get a Wand of Flame Arrow with the coupon code Fire It Up. That is also through November 12th. Right, we'll talk about community news. The 402nd Chronicle. This Saturday brings the Extra Life Game Day to DDO Stream. Find people streaming DDO and raising money for sick kids from 1 p.m. to midnight on Saturday on the DDO forums. I will try to get this episode out before that, but it probably will be, as I said last week, I post the video on YouTube and then kind of tend to wait a little bit while it processes and gets up there and stuff, and also give it a little bit of a chance for people to listen to it and kind of send me red flags, say, hey, it don't work, it's broken, before I publish the whole thing. So probably this show will come out in the middle of that. But we did talk with Jerry as well about Extra Life. That will be after the Acidevs interview, so you can get more information about how you can participate in that. Strimtom interviewed members of the DDO team about Feywild and more, so you can watch that video. Altbar plays the DDO gallery game with Axel, so you can check out that video. It's a quiz of screenshots, I think trying to figure out where they are, but that's kind of what's going on there. The comment, which emote is most needed in DDO? Uh, you know, I don't know, eat. That could be kind of fun, possibly a little dangerous. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. That I don't have a good answer for that this week. The fan site news. Got a shout out for D&D Net on DDO stream, starting a new adventure called the Oracle of War. That's this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/DDO stream. That's the new show that I am doing the DMing for. It's replacing the Storm Age Chronicles for a bit. I'm really looking forward to it. Hope you come and check us out. You can also find it on YouTube after the fact or on Twitch after the fact as well. DDO Players News is getting ready to go to Feywild in their latest episode. We got a shout out for a review of Update 47 last week. DDO Stream is your first stop to find DDO on Twitch. This week, Alex and Lynn stream on Sundays. Bard Life celebrates Halloween and Brighter Days Ahead tonight. Heads back to Sharn. Also on Twitch, Voodoo Spice enters the Feywild. Druid's Fire holds a Halloween marathon, and Laurel Lil Flower Sniffs. On YouTube, Sofa plays The Caverns of Shog. Tusk Reaper Gaming has an overview of DDO classes for the new player, and DEC Gaming doesn't run away. Let's see. That will cover most of that stuff. Again, D&D night on DDO stream, 7 p.m. Eastern, for our pen and paper virtual tabletop shows. We got a bunch of different DMs. Usually, it's kind of a monthly rotating thing. So the first Sunday, second Sunday, they're all different shows. And I think we've got 3 kind of ongoing ones, one of which is the Oracle of War that will be starting this week. There's a couple that kind of get rotated in and out, a couple of bonusy type episodes as well. Especially with the holidays, you might see a rerun or 2, just because, hey, it's the holidays, we're with our families. And it gets a little tricky to get some of that scheduled, especially when Christmas is kind of near the weekend. That kind of makes those a little bit trickier to do. But we should have some content coming and some one-offs. I know Jerry's planning on doing some holiday-themed specials as well, which are always pretty fun. So that'll end the news portion of the show. So stay tuned for Ask the Devs Fables of the Feywild. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks to the devs for spending some time with me and answering some questions and some listener questions and that kind of stuff. Just talking about Fables of the Feywild and a few other things. Also, thanks to all of the contributors for DDOcast, to Sandy Stone Games, and to Wizards of the Coast, and to Cyber Ears for hosting the podcast. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our website at DDOcast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. If you have a DDO-themed webpage or you Twitch DDO and you'd like to be featured on our website, email us at ddocast@gmail.com. And you can hit us up at ddocast.com for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, a question you'd like to hear us answer, or a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi, leave a comment or email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates at DDOcast on Twitter. If you want to ask a follow-up question to the devs, the forum post for this show is probably the best place to do that, unless you want to send them a direct message, which they may or may not answer both of those. But in any case, stay tuned for Ask the Devs Fables of the Feywild. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask the Devs. We're really excited to bring this for you on DDOcast. It's always fun. We get to talk to the devs. So we'll just start by introducing folks. We've got Cordovan, the community manager.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
Severlin, the executive producer.
Hey everyone, good to be here.
I think that's the right name. Knockback.
Hi guys, excited to talk about the Feywild.
We have Lynnabel.
Howdy.
And we have Torc.
Good evening.
Welcome. Thanks for taking some time out of your days to talk with us. I just wanted to start. It's like, hey, how's it going with SSG? You folks. I mean, it's been a year, and we still managed to get a massive, an expansion. So, how are you guys doing? How are things?
We made an expansion in 2020, which I think is pretty impressive. Uh, so we're just sort of trying to unwind and appreciate that right now
It
on
did feel
launch
like
day.
kind of like a hat trick or like, a 3-point shot. Like we made it, but like it was a little touch and go there for a bit.
I'm really excited. I think I did a great job.
I guess, can I just say in context that we're recording this on the day this went live? So
Yep.
we're all kind of excited to really be able to see this all in the live world after all this development work. So if we sound a little excited, if we sound a little hyped for it, that's because we are, because this is launch day, man.
And if we sound a little tired, it's because
It's
we've
launch
been
day.
cramming
Yeah.
stuff into the game. Yes.
And hey, it's only one day late on the time frame that you gave in the pre-orders, so kudos. Let's talk about Feywild. What led you to developing and wanting to explore Feywild, and what do you hope Feywild brings to DDO?
So a bunch of different reasons. One is it's one of the most iconic Dungeons and Dragons planes. It's the first thing listed in the Dungeon Master's Guide. We were looking at some polls. It's like one of the most popular planes. So those are a couple of reasons. Another reason is it's a change of pace for DDO. We did gothic horror in Ravenloft and steampunk noir in Sharn, and we're now going to the land of fairy tales and telling stories about unicorns and mischievous and uh, uh, sinister satyrs and pixies, which might be something you see a lot in other MMOs, but it's not something you actually see that much of in DDO. So it's a change of pace both for the players and for us, the developers.
What?
Anybody else?
I think that one of the things that we were trying to get through is not only do we want to produce a lighter-hearted, but we also want to show kind of the gravitas of the magnificence of that landscape. So if you look at the work put into the art of just the sheer spectacle of what you see when you go there, that was one of our goals. We thought that that would be, uh, if done well, that would be very impressive to the players to end up in a land that feels different. I mean, we all have our Alice in Wonderlands and we all have our Wizard of Oz's from childhood. So if we could get, even a fraction of kind of that feel by stepping through the gate and going into this place, we felt that it would be impactful for players and they would really enjoy it.
I just wanted to add quick that while we also do have, sort of fairy tales in the Feywild and a great plane, we also talk about things like Grimm's fairy tales as well. So it's not all just, rainbows and unicorns here.
Right. To quote the Dungeon Master's Guide, it's a land of soft lights and wonder, a place of music and death.
What was important for you guys to capture when you were designing Feywild for DDO?
One thing was the notion that, on the one hand, anything can happen. You'll see lots of things happen that you wouldn't necessarily come to mind. But because it is the realm of classic fable, when they do happen, you're like, of course, I'm in the Feywild. That's the sort of thing I would expect to see. So it's both surprising and feels right at the same time, which I guess is what, you know, a place of wonder, in other words.
I particularly enjoyed. I worked on a quest called Make Believe, and I kind of enjoyed playing with the dynamic of the Fae, where they're these immortal creatures, and they conduct themselves in this particular way. They have like these particular codes of conduct. It's like it's how they entertain themselves as like time passes, and like the whole fairy tale aspect where so many like metaphors and things are symbolic, where they seem trivial, but they represent greater concepts because these creatures give weight to those concepts because it's all a game to them. It was really fun to write some dialogue. We did a lot more skill checks in this pack because there's this kind of social element to these creatures. It just they're just a really fun dynamic, I think, as an NPC group to interact with.
One of the key concepts in the pack is the notion of the Fey bargain, where if you make a deal with a Fey, they will always keep their word, but while they'll keep their word, they won't necessarily keep it in quite the way you expected. So that plays a big part in both individual quests and the story as a whole.
Did you have some things that were particularly, and Torc kind of just mentioned this, do you have some things that were particularly fun to play with and kind of design in the Feywild?
I mean, I enjoyed writing little encounters like it's an apple tree and you need the apple and you can like talk to the tree because it's the Feywild, and you can you can flatter the tree into the dropping the apple. You can woo the tree with a performance check, or you could hit the tree, in which case mayhem ensues as you would expect. Um, it's we did something we. One of the things I particularly liked that came out in Make Believe was this interaction you had with this Eladrin guard captain, who's this haughty, noble guard who just kind of has you tent pegged as a troublemaker and is getting ready to fight you. Um, and we put you in this dilemma where you can talk your way behind it, based off a D20 roll. And we've had these skill checks before, but I felt that one came off particularly poignant, where you actually care about that D20 roll. When you roll and you like flub that diplomacy check, you're like, oh man. And I felt that one particular dialogue kind of hit that. And that's a really hot like tabletop moment when it's like that roll hits the table and you're like the encounter is going to change, is going to veer left or right based on that roll.
Uh, Being the Feywild, you can have conversations with creatures and things you wouldn't normally talk to. And being Knockback, I was very pleased that I had an opportunity to have you talk to a door.
Not the first time in DDO.
Not the first time, right?
Um,
I was going to say you get to fight baked goods.
Yes. So there's a moment where the D&D monster manual intersects with fairy tales that was a lot of fun to put together.
Have a
And then
now.
there's go ahead.
I have this profound regret. We didn't make an effect called pie in your eye or something, or like splatter in your face. Maybe for it we'll do. Maybe we'll patch that in. But yeah, the pies were fun.
um, Aloni asks, are there any plans to add more Feywild content? Is this a place that we can expect to possibly visit again later? Kind of like we did with Sharn, right? There was the Sharn expansion, and then there were the Sharn docks, which was another adventure pack later.
Absolutely. So sometime in the next year, you'll see some more of the Feywild, um, and it will be a place we may visit again, and certainly you'll see some of those creatures again, because we have wide-ranging plans. Put it that way.
And Torc wants another excuse to get pie in your eye.
Among
Absolutely.
other things.
What can you tell us about the raid, including like maybe what players can expect in that, or kind of a timetable for when we might see that come out?
Timetable I can just talk about. It's not going to be immediate. We'll have more information on the timetable later, I think. It's in development. It's been announced as coming out after our release, which is today, as of the time we're recording this, we're releasing. So It's in the future, but I don't know that we've set a formal date for that yet.
We
Have
haven't, but we're looking at early next year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be after the holidays, just to set people's expectations. Probably well after the holidays. It's not something that is going to be released in December.
Okay.
Yeah, the Charles, you want to kind of get a little bit to the story of it?
Yeah, to set the scene, one of the major characters in the Feywild pack is Hirsum, the Prince of Satyrs, who is an archfey, a godlike figure who is a musician. And he wants to return the Feywild to its pristine state before the Eladrin showed up and before people started building palaces and structures and making courts. And the raid will deal with his attempt to do that. And it will also deal with his abilities as a sort of music god. And Torc can take it from there, I think.
So do you want to ask me if it's going to be as hard as Too Hot to Handle?
I feel like that was already answered by Jerry.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but
Okay, let me back up just a second though. I answered it, but I wasn't paying enough attention when I was answering it. So the answer is my intention. Correct me if I'm wrong, Torque. Is it will not be as difficult as Too Hot to Handle.
yeah, I mean, since this is you are finishing effectively the story arc when you complete the quests. This is more of a, kind of a how do it's like an
It's
extra.
more like Project Nemesis, and where it deals with the same characters, and or for that matter, the Forge Wraith raid in Charn, where you're resolving a plot line, but it's not necessarily the main plot line of the pack.
Yeah, it's like an extra follow-up chapter in the book. Um, it's going to be an accessible raid. We might play with a hard optional, maybe something like you saw in Lord of Blades, where you can opt into it. But it'll be kind of like a bread and butter raid, mostly for fun and laughs, and death and Reaper, but Reaper's Reaper.
For the record, if the harder optional includes another raid chest, I vote yes. That's fun.
I would just like to add too about Charles' comment on the Archfey being godlike figures. Let's keep in mind that the people that are saying the Archfey are godlike figures are the Archfey. So, let's take that with a grain of salt of how cool they are.
Yeah, they're kind of pushovers, really. Like, I don't know if they're that cool.
There's all types of gods in the world of DDO. Although, pedantic footnote, I don't think they are actually gods and that they don't grant spells to clerics. But
Yes, I believe that that's the case. You
Right.
have to be
Warlocks.
you have to be a mage. Never mind, I won't use that term, but let's just say that you have to be a warlock to basically convince them to give you powers, and they're really not devote in the same way as priests.
Trying to think of how many gods we've faced in DDO, because I can think of Loth and this Archfey guy possibly, and then Lord of Blades ?
Yeah, I mean, he's
well,
yeah, he's technically a god, but in that weird Eberron way, so it's hard to say.
a god who doesn't believe in gods, which then there's some people who are on the fringe of that. Lady Vol would be another, and Grazit, who
Archdemon.
is an archfiend, but
Yeah.
not technically a god.
Speaking of Grazit, any plans on bringing him back?
We really want to bring Grazit back, and we keep trying to fit him in, but and I will say, if Torc and I have any say in it, he will be back, but I can't tell you when.
I fell in love with his Fiend Folio Chris-styled sword that drips acid, so that's a thumbs up in my book.
So I want to transition a little bit into the loot for Fables of the Feywild. And the place I'd like to start there is the loot suite for Fables of the Feywild has a very different philosophy than we saw with Sharn and Ravenloft. And it was like maybe can you go into how you approached the loot suite and why you kind of went in that direction?
Sure. So our previous expansions focused a lot on me, working with the players and designing specific sets that would correspond to different like segmented archetypes. In which, if you're a melee DPS, there's a melee DPS set that you'd like to use. For this, we kind of swung pretty hard in a different direction, in which we're split up into basically 3 different archetypes, with spring and summer kind of merging onto each other to both be like martial DPS, although one is a little bit more range focused, the other one's a little bit more melee focused. You can kind of pick and mix. So whereas before your set was essentially kind of designed, tailor-made for that archetype, this is much more of a take what you want kind of thing. The set bonuses themselves work differently. You're not trying to reach a milestone and then you get all of the benefits. For every piece that you equip, it will increase the magnitude of your set bonus. So you can take as many or as few of the items that you want. And that means like kind of just broadening out like what's kind of available. This helps us do a lot to target builds that may not have had like gear specifically made for them, or like builds that have been underrepresented in our previous loot suites. And it lets us be a little bit more creative, I think, with how the individual items check out.
I think one of the things that you mentioned in the preview forums too was this idea that you'll find items in different sets for different kind of builds. So like the obvious one being casters. There's stuff for casters in each of the different sets.
Yes, that's actually part of why the bottom tiers of the set bonuses are all defensive. So you could theoretically speaking go, I'm a fire caster, so I'm really going to want this ring that's in summer that's all about fire casting. Is there another item in summer that I could use? So I get a 2-piece set bonuses for some of that MMR. And like that would be an interesting choice that you could make. Or you could just get the one ring, or don't use the ring at all, or use the ring with a set bonus override. I think an important part of like the split off into the 4 different seasons is that those lines are a little bit blurry, just like everything else is in the Feywild. Because if it's too structured, then I'm just kind of reinventing the same kind of loot like expectations as before, but with a much more deeper pocket. And I think that players will really appreciate the soft incentive to try and diversify which sets that they're in. And worst case scenario, a little bit of extra defensive stuff if you're just trying to get 1 or 2 items. I don't think it's the end of the world, and there certainly are more than enough items in each set to fulfill your needs if you're just looking to wear a whole bunch of items in fall, for example.
And then is this kind of an approach that you expect to take going forward more, or is this kind of something that, that was for this suite and the next suite? Who knows?
Well, we'll see. A lot of my job is responding to feedback, even stuff that's not necessarily said out loud or to me on the forums, just trying to get the general vibe. And I mean, I'm certainly very confident. I think this is actually some of the best work that I've ever done, and I'm so happy to bring all of these cool new effects and all this cool new art. But honestly, if the players aren't really vibing with it, that's okay, and we can try something else. We can modify things as is. That's one of the real benefits of working on this game, is that nothing's really set in stone. We can try to find the best possible option. So I guess to answer your question, it's going to have to depend. If everybody hates this, I'm not going to do it again.
For the record, everyone's not going to hate this.
Oh, I've got some people have already started to figure out the secret thing, and they're putting the pieces together, and I'm really happy to see that happen. I'm very excited.
That's the secret thing that you mentioned on Twitter, I think, right?
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly.
The super secret feature that not even the Players Council knows about, that I put a significant amount of tiers into, but it all came together. I only broke 1 item in place putting it together. That's really good for me. But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoys it.
And that is not to be confused with the secret thing that is the dull dagger.
That is, I mean, players have gotten really close, and I'm really proud of them. I said it would be about a month from release until they figured it out. I don't know how long it's been, but I said no hints, and I'm not no hints. I'm not giving any hints.
No hints.
Yes.
I know you're tempted. That's why I'm reminding you, because you're so excited.
I hope people figure it out. It was really fun.
It does kind of harken back to the days of yore when there were puzzles on the forums occasionally and things like that. That players, there's a decent segment of players that really kind of like pulling into those things. So kind of figuring out the mystery.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping for. I hope to try and encapsulate some of that mystery because I saw there's a lot of chatter with the Dull Dagger, and that gave me a lot of confidence to move forward with the stuff that's in Feywild that I'm not talking about. So if you like that kind of, ooh, what's this actually do? Then the Feywild has some interesting stuff for you.
Carpone asked, with so many weapon types in the game, how do you kind of choose which ones you want to support when designing loot for an update?
I will ask the players' council, or I will just look on the forums and see what people request. It's there are, I think at this point 39 or 40, depending on how you count, like the disparate ones that are different on the back end, or but the same on the front end, like a scepter and a club are both the same thing. But it's almost entirely about what players are hungry for, and sometimes like making raid items. Sometimes they fall flat, and then I'll just try again and try and make a better one. Like if I make a cool Kopesh and no one wants the Kopesh, I can just make another Kopesh. But we try to keep a pretty even spread, and also it's about sometimes it's about art. Like I'll request art in advance if I have a really good idea.
So the other big thing that came with Feywild is the augment revamp, which has been something that players have been asking for and looking forward to. This has been a conversation ongoing at SSG. We're going to do an augment revamp for a while. What happened? Why was it now? And what are you excited about with it?
So to put a feather in a cap, Lynnabel finally came up with a great way to do the versioning of current items, and that our previous sort of strategy for doing that was to version people as they logged in rather than have a simpler and more clever way of doing that. So once Lynnabel kind of figured out and said, hey, you know what? I think I can version the items in place. It was like, oh my God, that would, if you've come up with a clever way of doing that that doesn't require a giant versioning patch, that would be awesome. And so once that sort of logical leap happened, the creation of new augments is great for everyone. The players get new augments. It's much easier for us to make new augments. And the new augment system doesn't require us to make tons of recipes because recipes are heavy on the server. The other thing is that the green steel augment system was always created sort of like with the thought of having that used for augments. So in the background, some of that was already in place that we could use and smooth out and make into an augment system that I think that the players would be very happy with.
Yeah, I mean, I was not that I'm not confident about our ability to execute upon this, but it was like it was a really complicated multi-part. Like we had to shift the whole system over, move everybody's augments over, and I was kind of dreading the launch because I was thinking to myself like, if this explodes, it's going to be terrible. But it worked out, and it's a little clunky. Players like the items have to be in a place in which the system can like go do the code when they log out and log back in. But over time, the amount of old augments, old slots in the system is going to go down as players log in and convert their stuff until eventually there aren't any old augments left. And you can leave your old augments slotted in if you don't care, you don't want new augments. That's actually totally fine. You just leave them in there.
Yeah.
But if you want to, like, the new system is cool, it's color coded, it's so much easier to use. We can build cooler augments on a much lower table. Like before, they were like they were really complicated to make and potentially pretty dangerous. It's like 9 or 10 effects per thing, and the actual slotting and unslotting part. By the time I kind of defanged it, we were up to 2,271 distinct recipes that made up the augment system. So now it's much less complicated on our end, and we can deliver just so much cooler stuff.
Also, we've only been live for hours, so when we say it seems to have gone well. Everybody behind the scenes are knocking on wood
Yes.
just to make that clear. Like, it's like, okay, let's not get cocky yet. There's still a lot of runway ahead of us.
I'm just waiting for someone to figure out that if you log in exactly 6 times before the next patch, then everybody's augments explode. Like it's something so silly and narrow that you missed.
I was just going to say, though, I think we went from a really big cookbook to a microwave, basically.
Well, I like microwaves. They don't have 22,071 moving parts, or 2,271 moving parts.
I want the mac and cheese augment.
Now you're making me hungry.
Yeah, it's like dinner time right now.
So can you kind of briefly kind of let players know what to expect if they haven't logged in, like what's going to happen to get them to move over to the new system?
Sure. So step one, this is the easiest part. All of your augments that are not slotted in anything, like if they're an augment bag or in your crafting storage, those have just automatically, without any interference, those just bloopy blop. Now they're a new augment, so you don't have to worry about those. If you have an item with empty slots in it, so there's no augments in this particular slot, you're going to have to, at some point, log in with that item in your inventory. And when you log in, the code will run. It will hide the augment slot, like the effect, and will add the actual augment to the item itself. So if you pull things out of your bank, you have to log in and log out, or log out and log back in again. But it's not like one log in and log out for every time. You just have to, at some point, log in with the items, and our code will run, and you'll get the little line of text in the item inventory, like the hover over. If you have an augment that's currently slotted in something, this is what's known as a legacy augment, and you're going to need a legacy augment unslotter to remove it. So your current unslotters, no matter where they are, now they only work with new augments. With the new augment panel and the new augment drag and drop system rather than the double click, those have just the bloopy blop over to the new system. You're going to need a new thing, a legacy augment unslotter, and you can find those in the marketplace and in the House Cannith crafting hall. I think actually every crafting hall. They're available for I think one copper or maybe 2 coppers. So they're very, very cheap. It's basically the cheapest we could ever make an item, because we don't want to charge you in-game money to just go over to the new system. So just buy a whole bunch of stack of those if you want to transfer everything over. And it works like an old augment unslotter that you're used to. You double click it and you drag your item in, and it will remove the augment safely as if you had used an unslotter. And then once the augment is out, behind the scenes, it's ready. Like it's like it looks like the augment's gone. It's not. You have to log out and log back in again. So you can just unslot all of your augments if that's what you want to do. Log out, log back in. It'll be in the tooltips. You only ever have to do this once per item. Like from now on, items are just going to drop with the new stuff. You don't have to worry about logging out and logging in when you pull them in from treasure or something. They automatically work. But your old stuff, you do have to run through that code. But ideally, this is about as harmless as we can make it, and hopefully, if there's any problems, please let us know, because we would really like to know if something were wrong.
So let me just kind of add, though, why someone might actually want to go through a process of unslotting some of these augments, and that is because, say, some of the stats on some of the skill augments, things like that, are going to be updating to the new Cannith crafting system numbers
Yes.
that would be in place.
Yes, a big and immediate benefit to unslotting your augments and then using the new system to put them back in is that the values on almost every single augment have significantly increased. So some of the things didn't shake out that way, just like fortification augments are exactly the same, resistance augments are exactly the same. I didn't take anything and make the numbers lower. They're either better or they're exactly the same. So don't worry that you're going to be losing anything if you go through this. It's going to be totally fine. But the augments that do get changed, they're going to be bumped up to Cannith crafting levels. So for example, at level 20, that's a resistance +8 item. So your old resistance +5 augment that's currently slotted, you take it out, now it's resistance +8, you put it back in, that's +8 to all your saves.
And just because I know a lot of players have really kind of keyed in on it, the DC augments that give you a plus to your spellcasting DCs.
Oh my
also
god, I'm
are
so
not.
embarrassed. I did the tooltip wrong. The actual effect is exactly the
Right.
same, but I swapped over the tooltip and then I didn't swap it back. That should be fixed in an upcoming patch. It's actually applying the exact same effect that it was before. Like effect transmutation augment, exactly the same. don't worry that one's changing. That's a typo on my part. I'm putting it right back. Should be exactly the same.
Now I want to talk a little about the Soulforged augments. Specifically, some of them have set bonuses applied in it. I know there's a little bit of confusion with the set bonuses and how those work. Can you give us a little explanation on that?
Sure. So Soulforged augments are when you take a raid loot item and turn them into an augment. The set augment crafting is specifically the set bonus stuff. And basically, you take an item that is part of a set in Ravenloft or Sharn, and you can boil that down to an augment that will override whatever it's slotted into that set. So say you've got a really cool piece of raid loot, but it's not actually part of a set bonus, and you're kind of weighing the pros and cons of wearing an item that doesn't correspond to a set. These augments can add a set bonus. It's a colorless augment, you slot it right in, and it will add or replace the set bonus with a new one. And if you have 3 of the same augments across 3 pieces of gear, you get that set bonus. So they're not as strong as, for example, a Sharn main set or wearing like a 3-piece like Feywild set, but they're not powerful. I'll say that. These can fill very important missing pieces of statistics, offering a pretty significant advantage. But like they're set bonus overrides.
And by that you mean that if you put one of these augments in an item that already has a set, it will suppress that set.
Correct. And if you manage to put 2 set bonus augments in, the last slotted will apply. You can't cheese this system. This is a set bonus override, and the last applied is what counts.
You do realize you just encouraged a whole bunch of players to try to cheese the system to prove you wrong, right?
If they can somehow fit 2 emp values into one ID set bonus loan property, I will be astounded. I'll be very impressed. I'll let them keep it. That sounds great.
You are not promising that.
Don't-
Sorry.
don't
Let me
tell.
step
Yeah,
in
yeah.
as the formal community manager and say maybe not on that one. I don't. Yeah.
We are fully confident that the players are clever enough to find multiple ways of trying to break the system, and we really don't want to encourage any of that.
So one of the things that I think came up while we were kind of looking at the items on Lemania and in preview is some of these, if you want to get like some of these set bonuses, and I think even one of the other Soulforged ones, you need 3 raid items. So the question is just, who do you expect to take advantage of that, and what's kind of your expectation there?
Well, it's people that raid, people that really want every edge they can get on their character, and they're able to go into raids every few days with their friends. And if they can grind out the item with runes or just get really lucky. But this is intended to add a lot of long-term longevity to raids that may not normally be in a raid rotation. Like these are incredibly powerful, like high-level augments that are meant to be a carrot on a very, very, very long stick. I know there's a lot of talk about how the accessibility of stuff like this, and specifically about how this has changed the dynamic of players passing items. That being said, if we've got 2 options here: is either raid items are undesirable and players will put them up for roll, or raid items are desirable and they won't put them up for roll. And we obviously want things to be desirable, right? Not everyone's going to want every single set.
Okay. Zeleron wants to know if you can choose an item effect from an old item to convert into an augment. Do you have anything that you're kind of looking at maybe for that?
I already did that. That's yes, I had 13 ideas actually that are done.
Yeah, that's a clever way of trying to get future information about what loot direction we may want to take. Oh yeah, if you could make any loot items into it, which is nice. I appreciate the players trying to get us to commit to making new loot items, but I don't know that we want to bite on that. It was good though.
The only one I was told not to do is the lightning bolt ward from the Titan raid. That one I was told don't do. So that's your answer, not that. Any other item is fair game with that one.
Actually, I was wondering, this was a long while ago, but Devil's Assault dropped some special augments, and I think I actually have a couple of them still left, but they got phased out that were like on a timer.
Oh God, never again.
Yeah. A chill went up down my spine when you said Devil Assault. I was like, oh.
So I should throw those away. Stop.
I honestly, I didn't see those when I was doing my
They
my
got
change.
they got phased out with the last augment revamp, I think.
Okay, well, if you still have some, I just don't even slot them. They probably won't work. Don't risk it.
They are a museum antiquity at this point. Frame them in your character bank or something, maybe.
I'll take a screenshot and send it to Lynnabel.
Yes, I vaguely remember that these existed.
Yeah. Stoner81 asks, why did you choose to have augments match Kenneth crafting? And did you explore any ideas of having it be more of a scaling effect as opposed to an augment per level effect?
So this goes back to what Seb was talking about, the way we could swap augments over as far as like not using our versioning system is concerned. Our versioning system is really, really cool, but the magnitude of work we'd have to do in order to actually change what each augment did without using the method that I devised would be pretty hard. And we would have to iteratively delete everyone's items or augments at every single level except for the one that we wanted, and then we could build a thing, which is a tremendously risky like behind the scenes work, and it's also not really what our designs wanted. Our goal here wasn't really to change anything fundamental about how players slot augments. Like they go on their level intervals that they were before. Our goal was to change their numerical scaling, and then from there change players' attitudes about how they slotted augments. So we chose the Kenneth crafting scale. We did discuss internally like a lesser value that still didn't stack, and we came to the conclusion that's kind of where we are now to a greater degree, and players just aren't enthusiastic. Like the right now our augments stop at level 28, so no matter what we did at like level 30 play, they're always going to be below the level 29 items anyway. And it shouldn't really make any sense to make them even worse than the worst they already were.
Anything else you want to say about augments before we move on? I know it was kind of a big project for you.
I mean, so far at 5:51 p.m. launch day, it seems to be going pretty well. So I'm very confident. I'm sure that will change.
Can we just do a real quick 101 primer for those who are like, it sounds great. How do I do this thing? It's on the character sheet.
What?
I was saying in terms of like how to actually access that augment panel.
Oh, the augment panel is in the inventory panel.
Yeah.
It's what the Legendary Greensteel button used to be, and then I finally figured out how to rename it to Legendary Greensteel from augments, and then the next update I had to change it back. Now that it is the augment panel after all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't double click on them anymore and get with a barter box. You open a panel and do it. The other thing about augments is now that it's been redone so we can actually make augments, we're hoping that the augment system allows players to be able to swap in a couple of items and be able to swap their augments around in order to fill in the holes. Because the gear Tetris, and by that I mean the ability to use different pieces of gear to make the perfect suit, is already, is already something that the players research. So when we put in a couple of new items, one of the things that the players would come back with is, I like this item, but I don't know that I want to completely refactor my suit. If we have augments and that we can actually upgrade, then it'll be easier for you to take an item out and then put a new item in that might be better. And that one thing that the old item was doing that you really need, you can get augments for it. And I think that will be a good thing in the long term when we're designing loot and the players are hunting down new items.
The next thing I'd like to talk about is the level cap increase that's been, it was initially going to be part of Fables of the Feywild, and that got pushed. So kind of have two questions, and a lot of listeners were kind of asking about this. One is, why was it postponed? And two, why does the team feel like we need that, and what do you hope to accomplish with a level increase?
As far as why it was postponed, I think we've said this a whole bunch of other times, but things like this, like that, would require a lot of work and a lot of planning, a lot of testing, a lot of iteration. They take a lot of time, and they take a lot of time if you really want to do them right. So we had a series of plans together that went through a lot of different internal reviews, and then we were looking at the dates of Feywild, and we went, well, we could do this, but instead, we're going to try our best to make Feywild the best that it can be, because like we can push this out and put all of our efforts into making Feywild just super awesome and super kick-ass, and we can handle the level cap increase later. Because our plans haven't gotten worse. Like we can still pick them back up, and we made some pretty significant headway.
I mean, honestly, I think that we have such experienced devs that we know the cost of rushing things, and the more important something is, the higher the cost of trying to rush it. So when we were looking at the schedule and realized that all of that work would be rushed for Feywild, we just didn't feel that that was in the best interests of our players. In the long term, we think that making character progress is something that players like doing, and classically and iconically, increasing levels is the best and most intuitive way of making progress, even beyond the loot, even beyond the augments and various different ways. Going up levels is something that is just fun for people. And so we are exploring ways of presenting that to the players in a way that will be super awesome for them and not feel punitive. So in order to do that, we don't want to rush it. We want to make sure that everybody likes leveling and they don't feel that their current characters or their current reincarnation loops are unduly punished by that. You should be able to play the game as it is now and reincarnate as it is now without worrying that the new levels that we might add will cause problems for you. And so to do that right will take a lot of design and iteration. So we didn't want to push it out to Feywild because we didn't feel we had the time to do it justice.
One of the benefits of working on a game like DDO is that we have a lot of history to look back on, and we have a retrospect view that not every project has. And we can look back over times we've done level cap increases or game-wide modifications in the past and say, with the benefit of hindsight, what worked and what didn't work. And from our examinations, I think that we on the team have a really good, solid idea of the highs and the lows or something like that. We can avoid some of the obvious pitfalls, and we can look back and say, well, this seemed like a great idea at the time, but now that we know, we can do an even better job. So, honestly, I'm really confident in our plans.
Until we don't.
Yeah, so there.
Right?
Ideally, we can minimize.
So, just bring that up.
That's really development as a whole, is trying to minimize the amount of winging it.
Is there anything you can tell us about the upcoming Epic Destiny pass?
I don't think we can really want to go into detail about that today because it's somewhat tied to a bunch of other kind of development plans we have. I mean, we did do some work on Epic Destinies in recent updates, and you can check the release notes for that. And I just don't think we're in a position to talk about our future plans for Epic Destinies today.
One of the things, honestly, that the reason is that we're all in on Feywild right now, the augment changes, the improvements. And so I think that we're most excited to talk about that only because it just came out. I don't know that we want to talk about stuff that isn't in that, because I think that's where the players' minds are going to be, and where we want to where we're super excited about too. It's hard to focus on those future plans when you just release something and we're all eager to see how the players react to it.
Also, once you start providing some level of hints of details of what you could do, to some extent, you're setting an expectation about what you actually will be doing down the road. And as I think Lynnabel adequately put it just a little bit ago, that we want to leave some design space open to do the right thing here.
Yeah.
I did want to ask a little bit about Hardcore Season 3 and Season 4. Hardcore Season 3 wrapped up about a month ago, and it had the new Extra Life rule change. What do you think? I'm just kind of curious. What How did SSG feel that that mechanic worked, and what were some of the cool things that you saw because of that?
So I'm like trying to think back. It feels so long ago because of all the stuff that's gone on from the recent Wild development cycles. But I remember we were. This was the first hardcore season, and correct me if I'm wrong, where we allowed non VIPs in, right?
Correct.
Right. So that we wanted to, it was that decision plus a combination of we want every season to be different. We want to play with different dynamics, and we were looking at making something a hardcore season that was more accessible. We wanted to kind of explore that. So we originally, when we thought of hardcore, we actually always it was actually developed with extra lives in mind. We, you know, there was a period we almost thought we might launch it with 3 lives as opposed to just 1 life to live, and we just kind of decided that if we were going to do 1 life to live, we'd rather start there rather than. But as we kind of iterated through it, like and we took feedback. It's people actually missed the hair-raising experience of death when we just gave you 3 lives at the start. So we ended up settling on you having to earn lives. So like you're kind of like until you get to level 8, you still have to really watch yourself, and then you earn yourself a respite. But if you get killed before you get to level 15, you're back on like 1 life to live. So that's just kind of the medium point we settled on. I don't know if the next hardcore season will have extra lives or not. Like we're still kind of collecting feedback from that.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to have some hardcore seasons that are one and done and harsher. So this isn't like the new way hardcore is being done at all. But we'll experiment with different things so people feel like the hardcore experience changes when they do it, so it's more interesting as they go in because it's different over time.
I'll say I had fun watching people try some content that maybe they weren't willing to try with only 1 life, like the Shroud and a
Right.
couple other raids.
Yeah, when we were working on it, we were like, they're gonna beat the Shroud. They're totally gonna do it because of this extra life.
Absolutely.
Do you have any updates on when we might see season 4, or is that still kind of one of those things that's not yet really thought about because of Feywild?
Well, we've
Um,
thought about it. I mean, we've thought about it, and we've announced just recently, I believe, that it's not going to be on the same cadence that we did hardcore seasons 1, 2, and 3. We're going to take a little break. I'm going to guess that pushes it. We're already in November here, right? So we're probably looking at early next year, right? Something like that, maybe.
yeah. We don't want to try. We certainly don't want to try to start one during the holidays, where players are both playing Feywild and doing the holiday festivals and such. So it'll probably be earlier next year for the next one.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. Like I'm still got my fingers crossed that this hardcore season 2 champions make it into the real world.
Oh, the new champions.
They're fun.
I kind of like that they were new champions in hardcore because it changes up. You go to hardcore and it like immediately feels different. I mean, there are differences that are outside. I kind of like that one of our old villains is the one that's setting. I guess this is the celestial one though. So yeah, we'll continue doing small stuff, Easter eggs, changing mechanics in order to make the hardcore seasons feel a little bit different. At some point, though, we're going to reach a point where we're going to cycle back and bring on an encore of old ones in case people like them. So that will happen as well.
The new champions almost killed me the first time I ran into him because I got so focused on, oh, this is a new champion. What does it do? And someone was like, hey, your health is almost gone. Where are you? I'm like, oh yeah, back to staying alive.
That was a fun batch to work on. I like the minus touch guy that could turn you to gold.
I mean, that was cool until I realized there was a dot associated with it, and I didn't want to die. It was a particularly evil dev touch.
Does that thing actually do damage? I thought the dot was more or less there just to let you know. I mean, I know it does damage, but I don't remember how hard it hit because it was mostly there to let you know that you were about to turn to gold. It was sort of like a dual functionality.
I don't remember it being that deadly, but when you have one life to live and you're incapacitated, you can't do anything, and you're taking damage, everything seems big.
Yeah, that's true. Like even the softballs on hardcore, every now and then one crit hit.
Everything is exaggerated when you're one death away from losing the character.
So a couple of things that some of the players wrote in. Carpone asks, how do you choose what bugs get fixed?
Oh wow, that's actually we should save that discussion for maybe a future time. That's a big discussion. That could be a whole show. And as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure there's been that show on DDOcast. But we would want to probably have some people who will more directly work for QA here to help answer that question. I mean, I could give you an answer based on kind of what they do, but that sounds like something that would maybe be a wider discussion. Maybe we should save it for that.
Yeah, there's a whole ranking system essentially, and we do passes through and grab things that are ranking. The other issue is that some get fixed because people are in that space, and so they fix them while they're there. So there's a number of factors.
I'm sure there's probably also a factor of a particular dev runs into a bug that suddenly becomes their nemesis and must be defeated at all costs.
Sure.
A lot of bug fixing happened because of the first hardcore season. When we all
and a ton of it is prioritized based on community feedback as well, clearly.
One of the things that came up when I asked players for question was recently there's been a lot of issues with the chat server and staying connected. Zoning into different areas has seemed to be a little bit of a problem. I know there were some updates in the Fables of the Feywild. Can you maybe speak to some of those, and then maybe if there's some other things that you're looking at to help alleviate some of those issues?
A lot of the chat issues had to do with back-end optimizations that we were doing. So what the players didn't see is that we're trying to improve our back-end system, and my tech ops team did a tremendous amount of work to do that. And engineering had to support them because all of our storage systems for our character databases have been moved over to another system. And that happened pretty transparently, but doing that was a lot of work, and a couple of the servers had a missing index, which was causing searches on that to take up much longer, and so that played a little bit of havoc in terms of that. The other issue is there were ongoing structural problems that splashed into DDO and affected the performance a little bit that were passed. So right now we're running, and any issues and lag that the players are running into are either population based or good old fashioned like actual code issues, whereas before it really wasn't that. Unless there's some other thing, knock on wood, that we run across with that.
Apocalypse would like to know if there's any plans to upgrade summons. They seem a little underpowered these days.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is that we don't want to haphazardly do summons. We want to, when we do summons, we kind of want to do it as a system so that they all get updated in a manner that's sustainable. So it's a big task. We don't want to just upgrade a couple summons and leave the rest of them undone, and we don't want to do it so that we can't easily modify it in the background. So we're kind of waiting for a time to address that as a entire system.
This sounds very similar to us talking less than a year ago about the augment system, saying, well, it's a big thing and we can't just do a little bit of it, we're going to have to do the whole thing at once. And it turned out really well for augments, so hopefully.
I mean, summoning is classic. The other problem with summoning that you have to be careful of is that if there's too much summoning, it causes more pathing, and pathing is expensive to the server. So unless we had, like, one of the things we were talking about is having a less expensive pathing for mindless creatures where they aren't quite as smart about running around after you. And if we did that, and you could summon mindless skeletons that would kind of not really find their way to people, it would be much cheaper, and you could make a necromancer type of tree or something. And so that is also a possibility in terms of like making a summoning type archetype as a character or a tree or a class, or update some of the summoning things. Right now, if we had someone who was constantly summoning and it was efficient, then overall all of the extra pathing is probably not something that we want to encourage, to be honest.
Bolo Grub would like to know if there's any updates on filling out the open guild airship amenity slots.
Like
Yeah.
augments?
Yeah, no, we were just talking about one of the things that we want to look at is it's time to give cool stuff to guilds, but I don't have much more to say beyond that. But in the future, that's something that is on our radar of something we'd like to do.
Probably not involving guild reincarnation. I remember that came up earlier this year at PAX East or something like that.
Yeah, a player suggested it, and I was amused by it, and then all of the players assumed that we were going to immediately do it.
It was my favorite part of that interview, though. Mostly because of your coworker's response of "Oh no."
That's what I was thinking.
having the guild have goals together is really cool. As long as it gives them a reason to get together on a night. And honestly, one of the things we like about DDO is, unlike other games, there is an awful lot of DDO play that our friends get together weekly and do dungeons. It's kind of one of the issues that our looking for group panel doesn't always fill out, because there's a lot of people on, but they play with their friends weekly, kind of like a normal D&D session that you would do for tabletop or over Zoom or whatever. So doing guild stuff is great because it encourages like a whole bunch of guild play as the guild is getting together with other guild members and doing stuff, and we want to encourage that. It's not necessarily the reincarnation-ish part of it. It's just that like an evergreen system where guilds are rewarded for playing together is something that I think would be good for the guilds in our game to be able to do.
Just as an aside about DDO development overall, we have enough excellent ideas of things to do to last us for another dozen years. You know, we have no shortage of things. So we have this massive list, and things bubble up or down depending on who has time or whether we get new technology or various different things. But there are a lot of things that players suggest that go on that list. And the fact we haven't done them immediately doesn't mean we don't think they're a good idea. It just means there's a dozen years worth of stuff in the rest of the list.
Of course, by the time you get to the end of that list, there's still going to be another dozen more years of stuff you've come up with all the time.
Yeah, it also sometimes it's also what resources are available are often a factor. Like when certain resources overlap, then you're not going to be able to do two of those things in the same year, for example. So there's sort of a just pacing that we're kind of stuck with.
Last question I have for you guys is, hey, we made it to Feywild. What can you tell us about what's coming next? And Mr. Magic kind of specifically was asking about maybe an update on the continuing enhancement pass work that's been going on for a while.
Steelstar and I, we have a lot of plans. Some of them are on paper, some are more theoretical. But for right now, we don't have anything specific to announce as far as like what we're targeting next.
And no offense, but I don't want to lead players away from Feywild. And honestly, with the Destiny Pass, people's sort of attention to improve trees is going to be focused on the later levels, and then we'll get back to the heroic classes again. Unless there's some exploit or some class that is in dire need that we can sort of give relief to with small changes, chances are you're going to see a lot of focus on Epic Destinies and not as much focus on heroic for the time being.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us, guys. anything you want to say about Feywild or anything else on the way out?
I'm just really proud of us. I think that we did a really great job, and given the circumstances, I think we nailed it. Like, it's a 3-point shot from the half court, and it really seems like we sunk it. I'm really happy.
In order to give a pat on my developers' back, because this certainly doesn't reflect on my personal skill, but keep in mind that all of this has been done while they've had to organize remotely in order to be safe. So it's all the more impressive of the stuff that they're delivering, because there have been challenges in moving remotely, continuing that communication, keeping all the team communicating. That is an ongoing thing that we're looking to improve on and get better at. But I just wanted to give a shout out to the devs for doing such a good job of navigating that, doing that, and providing like fun and enjoyment to the players all year, because I think that that's an important thing to acknowledge.
And then maybe just really quick on our way out, where can people access Fables of the Feywild in game so that they can go check out this fun new stuff?
Sure. You can go to the Hut from Beyond. It's in the Stormreach Harbor. If you have the Fables of the Feywild expansion, then you'll just click on the portal there and you'll be on your way.
All right, so thanks for watching, and we hope you really enjoyed this. If you want to send any questions for future Asset Devs, you can do that by leaving a comment or just emailing DDOCast@gmail.com. You can also ask these fine folks questions on the forums. You may or may not get a response depending on what they're able to comment on. But check out the Lamania forums and the next stuff that comes out when that happens. I know Lynnabel has been really active there, particularly with the loot stuff as well. So that's always an option. All right, hello, welcome. I have with me Cordovan, Community Manager at SSG, and wanted to give him an opportunity to talk about Extra Life, which is kind of it's a yearly thing for you and SSG and some other folks. So just kind of tell us what it is, how's it going this year, and how can people give to that program?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. So, Extra Life raises money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals, and each team picks a hospital that they're raising for. Each individual person fundraising can also pick their own as well. And we are raising money for the Boston Children's Hospital. We've been doing this for years now, and it's always a really good time. And the community always comes out and supports us in very significant ways. We are the last Let me make sure I'm correct. Last 2 years, we have been the top fundraiser for the Boston Children's Hospital for Extra Life. And that is not due to me or us, but rather you, the folks who are doing the donating to Extra Life, which it helps sick kids. It helps kids who can't afford this kind of treatment get this kind of treatment. And it's a long term thing that a lot of game studios, gamers, game players, and what have you, tabletoppers even, do every year. And we're blowing it out this Saturday, November 7th. I think this may be too late for that. I'm not sure. But we're doing a noon to midnight stream over on the DDO side, 1 to midnight stream over on the DDO side, rather, and noon to midnight stream on the Lotro side. I'll be popping back and forth between the two channels, doing a bunch of streaming. We have other DDO streamers on there, and it's going to be a really good time. So if you would like to, please check out twitch.tv/DDO stream from 1 p.m. to midnight on Saturday, November 7th. If you can't make that, or if you're hearing this afterwards, you can go to extra-life.org/team/SSG. Extra-life.org/team/SSG and make an easy donation to the group. Anyone you want is fine. Get in touch with me on the forums after you do it, because I'm doing some giveaways after November 15th. So if you private message me on the forum and just say, yo, this is Bob, I gave you $20 on Saturday under the name Bob the Conqueror or whatever, right? And then I can match that up and then make sure I get you your stuff here afterwards. So you can find that whole list about like some kind of incentives and giveaways and all that sort of thing over on the DDO forums.
And just to put out there, you've already you add just under 28,000 out of your goal of 20,000. So
Absolutely. Yeah, we crushed our goal this year. Just an absolute destruction of the goal early on this year. But I still decided, because of the time of COVID and because of everything going out on in the United States and the rest of the world, and people's ability to sort of maybe make charitable donations and what have you, I didn't want to start like early on doubling my goal or something like that. This crushes what we've raised in past years, and that's good. And we're still going into game day, and we still have plenty of money to raise. But I didn't want to set some kind of artificial goal and then perhaps struggle because of the time of COVID and what have you. And I didn't want to overly push people to maybe make donations that they couldn't reasonably do in their lives. So I wanted to just kind of keep it where it was.
cool. Anything else you want to say about Extra Life? Are you doing Movember this year as well?
I am. You can't see this, but I don't have a beard anymore. And yeah, that's going to be kicking off after Extra Life, just because of the fact that we're releasing Fables of the Feywild. We were doing work on the other game not that long ago in terms of big stuff that we did, and all this game day and Extra Life and trying to manage all that. So I'm pushing out the fundraiser part of November until after Extra Life. So that'll be after November 15th. Still be a 30-day drive, still have some fun on Twitch and elsewhere. And we'll have more info about that. But I am actually taking part. I'm just not really promoting it until after this Extra Life work is done.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Again, thank you to the devs, and thank you to Jerry for talking to us today about Fables of the Feywild, all the other fun stuff we got to talk about, and about Extra Life. We hope that you would consider supporting Extra Life and helping sick kids. We just want to say thanks to them again. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website at DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. You can hit us up at DDOCast.com for our show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch, twitch.tv/DDOcast if you want to watch the shows live. Until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chest level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.